The skies above Virulon were never supposed to turn red. Not this deep into the neutral zones. Not in a system so small, so peaceful, and so far from any major war front. The people of Virulon had lived quiet lives for over 200 years growing. Crops, storing knowledge, raising families. They believed in peace, in treaties, in the safety promised by the Galactic Union, but all of that was ripped away in a single night when the first wave of slaver ships broke through orbit without warning. The Virulon High Council had never seen war before. Most of them didn't even know how to use a weapon. But they watched in horror as the skies cracked with fire and sound, as buildings exploded and panic flooded their streets. Dozens of small towns burned in the first hour. The slavers came down fast, brutal, and without mercy, dragging whole families from their homes, slaughtering those who resisted, laughing through their helmets as they crushed resistance beneath their boots in the main communications hall. Counselor Raish Lorvac stood frozen in front of the central screen, his four hands shaking. His robes were torn. Blood someone else's was on his neck. Behind him, young aides cried quietly. Some had lost their entire villages already. Outside, the sound of screams mixed with distant gunfire. They had sent a signal, one final cry for help, crossed every known frequency, on every emergency channel, was all they could do. And then they waited. The Galactic Union wouldn't come. It was already clear. The Virulons had seen enough. Now to understand the truth, no, patrols were nearby, and the Union had known that. They had signed the treaties, made the promises, and then left Virulon undefended, because who would bother to attack a farming world? Resh whispered to the screen, as if praying to it. Please, someone answer. Anyone? Far away, in the black void between stars, the signal moved faster than light. It passed through beacons, bounced across dark satellites, pulsed through forgotten networks that hadn't been touched in decades. Until somewhere deep in the shadows of the outer fringe, the signal hit a silent relay station, one that wasn't supposed to be active, one that didn't belong to the Union. The station blinked once, then twice, and then it sent the signal straight into the waiting core of an old warship hiding behind the wreckage of a dead moon. Inside the command deck of the Graveborn, the lights flared to life. Dust drifted through the air. Steel groaned softly, as if waking from a long sleep. Captain Elias Ward opened his eyes slowly. His skin was scarred, his hair gray at the edges. But his stare was sharp like a knife. Around him, other crew members began to rise. Not one of them looked like a diplomat. Not one of them smiled. The screen in front of Elias showed the emergency. Transmission. Screams. Fire. A child begging in a language the translator barely caught. Slavers dragging bodies. Behind the noise, a trembling voice repeated one sentence. Over and over, please help us. We are dying, the crew said. Nothing. Captain Ward leaned forward in his chair. His voice was low, said course. Coordinates confirmed, replied his navigator. Virulon system. It's outside Union protection zones. That's why we're going, he said. Then, after a pause, are the weapons online? The weapons officer looked up from his console, already typing. They are now. Without another word, the Graveborn moved. The engines roared quietly as it tore through space, fast, silent, and without warning. A ship built during the Forgotten Wars, a ship never meant to exist in peacetime. Ship from Earth. Back on Virulon. The skies remained red. Smoke rose from cratered forests. The slavers had begun marking their captured zones with banners, mocking the Union in any hope of rescue. They didn't fear anything now. Their orbital sensors were weak, outdated, and lazy. No one was watching the outer approach. Until the first pulse hit. It wasn't a message. It wasn't a reply. It was an energy distortion, massive, sharp, and terrifying. Something had just jumped into their system. Something big. The slaver commanders laughed at first. Maybe another prize ship. Maybe a frightened cargo hauler trying to run. But then the scanners finally caught a silhouette. And their laughter stopped. The ship wasn't Union. It wasn't commercial. It wasn't anything they had seen before. The hull was jagged, scorched, and black like death. Old scars from past battles ran along its sides like ancient tattoos. Its engines glowed with a faint blue fire that didn't match any known design. And worst of all, it had no escort, no warning lights. And no hails, just silence. And then it powered up its main cannon. The slavers panicked. Orders flew across their combs, raise shields, lock weapons, prepare to fire. But by then, it was already too late. The Graveborn didn't speak. It acted. With one blast, it vaporized the nearest slaver cruiser. A second beam cut through the atmosphere and shattered a dropship mid-landing, sending flaming wreckage into the trees below. The slavers screamed, but the ship didn't stop. Back in the council chamber, the Virulans felt the world shake. But this time, it wasn't the enemy. Outside, the fire in the sky had changed color blue, white, and cold like judgment. The aides rushed to the windows, its eyes wide as they saw a shadow descending through the smoke. Massive, sharp, unlike anything they'd seen. Raish stepped forward slowly. What? What is that? An old Virulan tech whispered without looking. Away, that's not a Union ship. Raish's throat tightened. Then who? The tech looked back, pale. That's a human ship. Silence fell across the room, because everyone had heard the stories about the humans. The ones who came from the Death World. The ones who didn't follow the Union's rules. The ones who stopped fighting only because there was no one left to fight. They weren't diplomats. They weren't protectors. They were something worse, or maybe something better. And now, one of them had come. Not because of a treaty, not because of a deal, but because someone cried for help. And the slaver fleet scrambled in confusion, fear spreading like infection through their ranks. On every screen aboard their command ships, the same image glared back at them. A single warship drifting closer, slow and steady like a beast stalking. Wounded prey. The scanners struggled to lock on to its full design. Its hull wasn't smooth like modern vessels. It was brutalist thick armor, angled plates, exposed gun ports. Battle scars ran along its spine, glowing faintly like ancient burns that had never fully healed. The ship wasn't polished. It wasn't pretty. It was made to survive. From the bridge of the Graveborn, Captain Elias Ward stood watching the visuals in silence. He had seen enough in his life to recognize this pattern, the way enemies stalled, unsure whether to run or fire. He didn't care either way. "Signal open?" he asked calmly. "Open, sir," replied the comms officer. Captain Ward leaned toward. The transmitter voice flat and cold. "To the unidentified slaver vessels in Virulan airspace, this is the Earth warship Graveborn. You are occupying a civilian world. You have two options. Leave now and surrender, or stay and be erased." No response came back. Ward didn't wait. "Target the lead frigate," he ordered. "Don't destroy it. Just take its eyes." A moment later, the Graveborn's rail cannon lit up like lightning against the void, hurling a kinetic slug through the void with a sonic boom that shattered silence. It didn't explode. It didn't burn. It simply punched through the slaver ship's central sensor core, ripping it open like paper. Sparks burst, fires spread. The frigate swerved uncontrollably, half blind and drifting. On board the slaver flagship, alarms screamed. The fleet commander, a thick-scaled creature from the Vortok race, slammed his fist into a console. "Where is the Union response?" The second-in-command shook his head. "No Union presence within jump range, but, sir, the ship is human." The commander froze. "That cannot be. Humans don't interfere. The Union has rules. Then they've just broken them." Back on the surface of Virulan, the survivors watched the sky in stunned silence. The roaring noise of bombardment had stopped. The slaver ships in orbit were no longer firing. And high above them, the human vessel cast its long shadow over the treetops like a silent god. A massive triangle of black steel, floating with slow precision. For a moment, even the wind held its breath. Inside the council chambers, Raish Lorvac gripped the edge of the central table. His heart pounded in his chest, not from fear, but something stranger. a mix of awe and uncertainty. "We need to contact them," he said. "Whoever they are," they answered. Counselor, a younger aide, said nervously, "They destroyed a warship without warning. What if they aren't here to help?" Resh turned, eyes hard. "Then we're already dead. But if they are here to help, we need to show we're not." "The enemy." Before the aide could reply, another boom echoed across the sky, not from above, but from the jungle outside. They had landed. Human drop pods fell like comets, slamming into the ground with bone-rattling force. The pods hissed open one by one, releasing armored figures that moved in coordinated silence. No banners, no announcements, just weapons drawn, helmets on, and precision in their steps. To the Verlins hiding in the ruins, the humans didn't look like saviors. They looked like predators in black armor, their faces hidden behind angular visors. They swept through buildings, quickly checking corners, clearing rooms, and scanning for heat signatures. But they didn't shoot civilians. They didn't bark orders. One human even stopped to help an injured child stuck under debris, lifting a fallen beam with one hand and nodding silently before moving on. In the heart of a burned village, a slaver. Captain emerged from behind a collapsed storage dome, aiming a plasma rifle at one of the human Marines. He never finished pulling the trigger. The human's arm moved faster than light, grabbing the barrel and twisting it upward. With a single motion, he drove a blade between the slaver's ribs. No hesitation, no wasted motion. And still, no words. The other villagers watching from the shadows realized something terrifying and strange. These humans weren't angry. They were calm. To calm. In space, the Graveborn rotated slightly, bringing another set of railguns online. A second. Warning burst took out the engines of a retreating slaver vessel, sending it spiraling into the upper atmosphere. It didn't burn, broke apart like glass. One of the slaver survivors tried to send out a distress signal. The humans jammed it before the first word could escape. "Sir," the weapons officer called from the bridge. "Do we finish the rest?" Captain Ward stared at the display, watching. The remaining slavers tried to regroup, their formation collapsing with each passing second. "No," the crew looked up, confused. "Send a burst transmission to their flagship," Ward said. "One sentence. What message?" Ward's voice was ice. "Tell them this. The galaxy may forgive you. We won't." The signal was sent. And 10 seconds later, the Graveborn opened fire with everything it had. Rings of railfire, arcs of ion bursts, micro-missiles that sliced through shields like needles. One by one, the slaver ships were annihilated. It's not vaporized, not exploded. Taken apart piece by piece. As if the humans were making a point. This is what happens when you prey on the weak. This is what happens when Earth hears you. By the time the last ship fell, the battlefield was quiet. Too quiet down below. Right. The Virulent Council received a single transmission, uncrypted, unmarked, and translated perfectly. Read only this. Help received. You're safe now, but never forget who came. Raish stood in front of the message for a long time. Outside, the wind finally returned, and somewhere above the stars, the Deathworlders began to prepare for what came next, because one colony's cry had been answered, and the galaxy had just been warned. The Galactic Union didn't know what had happened yet. Their sensors were slow, delayed by bureaucratic routing and political filters. But the slavers knew. The slavers felt it firsthand, every fireball, every scream, every metal shard tearing through their ships. By the end of the first hour, they were no longer a fleet. They were survivors. And the only word being whispered through their fractured cums was one name. Humans. On board the last functioning slaver cruiser, Commander Draxel paced the war room with a wounded leg and wild eyes. He bled from his shoulder. Sparks rained from the ceiling above as crew members shouted incomplete reports. No shields, no exit vectors, no backup. "We underestimated them," someone said. "No," Draxel growled. "We forgot them." He smashed his fist into the display console. The image blinked with static, showing a grainy view of the Graveborn, still hovering in orbit, like a ghost made of iron and anger. He remembered the old stories about Earth, about how humans came from a world of storms and fire and giant predators. But he had laughed back then, like all Vortok war captains had. That was before he watched a single human warship disable 6 cruisers without breaking formation. Now, he didn't laugh. On the surface below, it wasn't over yet. Human drop teams moved through the jungles of Virulon like a dark wind. They didn't bark commands. They didn't chant or celebrate. They were quiet, controlled. Eyes behind thick visors scanned everything's signatures, biopatterns, motion trails, and when they found a slaver, it didn't turn into a battle. It became an execution. One Marine squad moved into a captured village where slavers had gathered hostages. The enemy thought the humans would negotiate. They threatened to kill the civilians if the soldiers stepped closer. The squad leader, Sergeant Ruiz, said only 2 words through her helmet speaker: "Stand down." The slavers laughed, so the humans moved in 3 seconds. 4 slavers were down. The 5th turned to run but was shot mid-step, not with a blaster, but with a projectile weapon that shattered bone. The hostages stared in shock. One child cried out. And then just like that, the humans holstered their weapons and cut. "The prisoner's bindings, you're safe," Ruiz said softly. The villagers didn't respond right away. They couldn't. They had never seen war like this. Not so fast, not so precise, not so human. Above, in the Graveborn, Captain Ward watched the live feeds with no expression. Around him, the bridge lights flickered as emergency pings rolled in. From scattered slaver ships trying to escape. "He ignored most of them, sir," said his operations officer. "One remaining corvette is attempting a blind jump. Their engines are failing." "Let it burn," Ward replied. "They chose this." The screen shifted again, showing a slaver warbarg trying to use civilians as a shield while it recharged its shields. Ward narrowed his eyes. "That one. No survivors," he said, and so it was done. A series of blasts from the Graveborn tore through the warbarg's defense grid, followed by pinpoint strikes from its rail turrets that severed its bridge section from the hull like a surgeon's blade. The explosion didn't spread. It folded inward, burning from the inside silent. Elegant destruction. The Virulon skies, once red from slaver fire, now flashed white and blue with human counterstrikes. Fire fell from the heavens like judgment, but it was only aimed at one side. The slavers screamed into their cums. Some begged for mercy. Others tried to sell coordinates. One captain even tried to surrender his entire ship in exchange for passage out of the system. Ward didn't even answer him because humans weren't here. To negotiate? Not this time. Back in the ruins of Verulin's capital, Resh Lorvac stood. On top of the central tower, his long robes singed at the bottom. Around him, survivors gathered in silence, watching as the final slaver ship broke apart in the sky above. The wind carried a strange smell, metal, smoke, something burning far away. But for the first time in days, it didn't smell like fear. Young Varellan girl stepped closer and asked, "Counselor, who are they really? The ones who came?" Resh didn't look at her. He just stared up into the sky, voice low. "They're Deathworlders." She tilted her head. "Is that a kind of army?" "No," Resh said. "That's a kind of planet." There was a pause as the girl tried to understand. "So, are they good?" Resh didn't answer that question. Not because he didn't know, but because he had seen too much to make the answer simple. The humans weren't angels. They didn't bring peace like the Union claimed to. But they brought justice. And maybe justice was better elsewhere. In the ruins of an old Varellan military station, human engineers reactivated the colony's central defense grid. Not because they were told to, but because they could. One by one, cities across the planet were brought back online. Water filtration, medical support, emergency shelters, without asking for thanks. The humans began rebuilding what the Union had let fall. But they didn't say they were staying, because humans never stayed. They arrived, like storms, fast, loud, and unstoppable. And then they vanished before the diplomats could catch up. That night, final transmission from the Graveborn, echoed across Virulon's networks. It was short, only 5 words. The debt is paid. Survive. And then they were gone. The slaver fleet had burned, the humans had left, and the galaxy had just learned what it truly meant to call for help and be heard by a Deathworlder. The smoke still curled from the wreckage of slaver dropships scattered across the Virulon jungles. But the skies were quiet now. No more screams, no more fire falling from above, just silence. A heavy, unnatural silence, like the planet itself, was holding its breath, unsure of what came next. The people of Virulon were free, but they were not at peace. Not yet. In the shadows of broken trees and shattered buildings, the human marines walked with heavy steps, their armor hissing softly with each movement. No banners, no flags, no smiles. Just steel, helmets, and weapons that hummed like living things. They moved in perfect formation, sweeping streets and clearing zones like they had done this 1,000 times before, and they had. Sergeant Ruiz led one such team through the ruins of the southern commune. Her visor scanned the wreckage, highlighting body heat, radiation leaks, and movement patterns. Behind her, Corporal Hensley whispered, "No slaver movement in this area. Civilians in the next sector. They're watching us." "They should," Ruiz said, not slowing down. "They need to know we're not their enemy. But do they believe that?" Hensley asked. Ruiz didn't answer. She stopped in front of a burned-out transport, crouched beside a collapsed child shelter, and pulled a tiny Virulon survivor from under a steel panel. The child was covered in dust, blinking up at her with wide, terrified eyes. She said nothing. No soothing words. No promises. Just reached into her pouch, pulled out a water pack, and gently placed it in the child's hands. Then she moved on. Behind her, the Virulon villagers crept out slowly, watching. They didn't cheer. They didn't rush forward with thanks. Just stared, confused and overwhelmed, trying to understand what kind of force had come to their rescue. Because this didn't feel like salvation. It felt like occupation at the command bunker. Counselor Resh Lorvac stood with a group of survivors on the edge of a landing platform, watching the human supply ships descend. They came down without ceremony, black, rectangular, functional, no music, no anthem, just the dull thump of boots on steel. He turned to his advisors. "Have they asked for anything?" One aide shook his head. "Nothing, no payment, no speech. They simply patrol, scan, and assist." "Why?" No one could answer. Back aboard the Graveborn, Captain Ward stared at a holographic display of the Virulon's surface. Green zones, red zones, resource hubs, wreckage, markers. He didn't blink. He didn't move. He just watched. "Sir," said Lieutenant Myra, stepping forward. "Local population stable. Slaver presence confirmed. Neutralized. Civilians are cautious. They should be," Ward replied. "We're not here to comfort them. Then why are we here?" Ward looked at her, eyes sharp. "Because no one else came. That's reason enough." Mira nodded. She had served under Ward long enough to know he didn't believe in speeches. He believed in action. The kind that didn't require applause. At the Central Relief Camp, a group of Virulon doctors were struggling to repair a makeshift field clinic. They had limited power, no clean water, and hundreds of injured civilians. They were doing everything they could until a group of humans arrived, wordlessly unloading crates of advanced medical equipment. Portable generators, nanite wraps, field diagnostics. The Virulons froze. One doctor stepped forward. "Why are you helping us?" The human engineer looked at her through his visor and said in a calm, tired voice, "Because pain doesn't care about borders." Then they got to work, and for the first time since the slavers arrived, the Virulons wept not from fear but from something else, something they didn't know how to name. Respect, gratitude, relief, all mixed with a deep, lingering caution. Because the humans weren't kind in the traditional way, they didn't comfort, they didn't smile. They didn't preach peace or hope. But they were efficient, brutal when needed, and focused on one thing only, ever letting it happen again, At the edge of the forest, two human snipers sat in hidden positions, scanning the tree line for any signs of slaver remnants. One of them, Private Voss, adjusted his scope and muttered, "Feels strange, doesn't it?" "What does?" asked his partner. "This? All of it. Helping people who don't know whether to fear us or worship us." The other sniper didn't look away. "We're not here for either. We're here to stop monsters, and if they think we're monsters too." There was a pause. Then at least we're the monsters on their side. That night, as twin moons rose through the still smoky skies, families gathered in silence. Some held hands. Others sat alone, staring at the stars. Overhead, the silhouette of the Graveborn moved slowly, its lights faint, but always visible, a reminder that someone was still watching. And in that quiet night, across every screen and datapad on the planet, a message appeared. Short, cold, and unforgettable. "We didn't come to be heroes. Came because no one else did." Virellans read it in silence. And slowly, something inside them shifted. Fear didn't vanish. But something stronger took root. Trust, built on action, not words. Because now they understood something the galaxy had forgotten. When humans come, they don't come to talk. They come to end things. And this time, they had ended the slavers, without permission, without mercy, without regret. The message echoed across Virulence networks for days. We didn't come to be heroes. We came because no one else did. What? And the galaxy noticed, within 72 hours of the slaver fleet's destruction, the Galactic Union's Central Council chambers were in chaos. Worlds that hadn't spoken to each other in decades now argued in open session. Representatives shouted over each other, demanding answers. Screens displayed the footage leaked from virulent humans landing like ghosts, slaver warships breaking apart mid-orbit, villages burning and then rebuilt under Earth's flagless soldiers. The Union didn't fear the slavers. The slavers were a problem, yes, but a manageable one. The Union feared the implication that Earth had acted without permission and deployed military forces beyond their allowed boundaries, and had done it better than the entire Union fleet. Ever had no approvals, no treaties, no oversight, just pure, overwhelming force in the private chambers beneath the council floor. Admiral Zareen of the Galactic Peacekeeping Assembly stood with his arms crossed, sharp eyes focused on the flickering footage of the human warship Graveborn. "They moved without clearance," he said coldly. "This is a violation of interstellar engagement laws." High Commissioner Selna of the Diplomatic Corps looked uneasy. But the slavers had already begun mass execution. The humans stopped. "Them. The broadcast from Virulin shows they humiliated us," Zarin interrupted. "They made the Union look slow, soft, irrelevant, and now every outer system is asking where we were." A silence followed. Everyone in the room knew the truth. They weren't there, and Earth was. Back on Virulin, the atmosphere had shifted. Not because the danger was over, but because something deeper had begun. Human patrols still walked the ruins, but now Virulon. Citizens followed them, asked them questions, pointed out hidden slaver hideouts, brought them food. Some even offered gifts, simple things: carved stones, small data crystals, ancient Virulin poems. The humans didn't accept any of it, but they nodded. And the people notice, in the capital's main plaza, Councillor Raish Lorvac stood beside Sergeant Ruiz as a new satellite relay dish was hoisted into position by human engineers. Around them, children ran and laughed some for the first time. Since the invasion, Raish watched them, then turned to Ruiz. "The Union has sent word. Diplomats are inbound. They say, you've interfered." Ruiz didn't even flinch. "We didn't interfere, we intervened. They might not care about the difference." Ruiz finally looked at him. "We do." An hour later, the Union diplomatic cruiser Unity Flame entered orbit. It was gold and white, sleek and majestic, built for show more than combat. Its arrival was broadcast on every screen, announcing the presence of peace, law, and order. The humans didn't salute. They didn't even acknowledge the ship's descent. They simply watched. On the ground, the Union delegation, dozens of officials in pristine robes, Guarded by a ceremonial honor, guard marched through the ruined plaza with manufactured sympathy. Their lead ambassador, Vel Oron, stepped forward, arms raised. "We come in peace," he announced. "And we thank you, brave people of Virelon, for enduring this tragedy. The Galactic Union mourns your loss and commits to rebuilding." Raish, standing in front of the central monument, didn't speak. Not yet. Aron turned to the human officers standing nearby. "And to our allies from Earth, we express gratitude for your timely presence. However, future matters of planetary defense should be coordinated with proper authorities." Captain Elias Ward walked forward then, just enough to be heard. No salute, no bow. There was no time to coordinate. Ron smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Still, we must respect protocol. A warship in Union airspace without approval, this must be addressed." Ward took a long breath. "You're welcome to address it. And will Earth comply with a formal investigation?" Ward's next words were soft. Too soft. "No." The crowd around them went quiet. Oron blinked. "Excuse me?" "We don't answer to cowards who watched people die from comfortable seats," Ward said. "This planet called for help." "You didn't answer? We did." Oron's voice turned sharper. "You risked destabilizing a treaty network that's kept peace for centuries." Ward's stare didn't waver. "You call that peace? Slavers took children while you processed reports." Behind him, several Marines stepped forward, not threatening, but united. "Ready?" The air thickened. Cameras hovered. Civilians watched. From windows and rooftops, Raish finally stepped forward, his voice firm. "With respect, Ambassador, the humans saved us. You arrived after the fires burned out." Ron opened his mouth, but Resh raised a hand. "This isn't a debate. A fact." And with that, the tide shifted. The broadcast went viral across nearby sectors. News feeds spun into chaos. Former fringe colonies demanded Earth patrols. Civilian protests erupted on core worlds, questioning why the Union had allowed the Virelon massacre to happen at all. The Union had the laws, but Earth now had the truth. Later that night, aboard the Graveborn, Captain Ward stood alone on the observation deck, watching the stars. "They're going to push back," said Lieutenant Mira. Beside him, "Let them," Ward said. "What if they try to isolate us?" "They can try." She hesitated. "And if they come for us?" Ward turned toward her, the distant stars reflecting in his tired eyes. "Then we remind them what happens when we stop being silent." Because the Union could draft new laws, but Earth had already written its message in the wreckage of Slaver. Ships in the safety of one grateful world, and it wasn't asking permission anymore. Across the galaxy, tension crackled like thunder waiting to strike. News of Earth's defiance on Virelon spread faster than the Union's damage control efforts. Every colony, every trading hub, every border world now whispered the same question. Had the Deathworlders just declared war on the old order? Or were they building a new one? No one knew for sure. But everyone was watching, on the core world of Caltrix Prime. Thousands gathered around outdoor holoscreens to watch the diplomatic broadcast scheduled by the Galactic Union carefully. Constructed message of unity, damage control, and carefully worded condemnation of Earth's unauthorized intervention. The Union's silver-robed leaders stood in front of the golden banners of peace, offering speeches full of familiar lines. Protocol must be respected. The Union seeks understanding. Earth must not act alone, but mid-transmission, something changed. The holoscreens flickered. At first it looked like interference. Then every broadcast, every planetary feed, every secure comm line froze, replaced by a single signal override. The image that appeared was grainy, quiet, and completely UN Pulisher. It showed the orbit of Virelon, still smoldering. The camera pulled back slowly, revealing a broken slaver ship drifting in pieces, each section scarred by kinetic impact and burn trails. No music, no narrator. Then a voice-calm female, and unmistakably human, began to speak. "This is not a message of apology. This is a statement of truth. Across the stars, crowds went still. We received a cry for help. No council approved it. No law authorized it. No committee debated it. But we heard it. The image changed. Footage played real. Footage of children hiding under rubble, slaver whips cracking in the air, Varellan cities in flames. Then came the human ships descending, the Marines walking into fire, mother pulling her child into her arms as the human soldiers stood guard, their weapons aimed outward. We didn't arrive to negotiate. We arrived to end it. The image switched again. Now it showed the empty council seats on Union patrol stations near the region. Their logs, their ignored messages, their silence. The ones who were supposed to protect Varellan had done nothing. If action without approval offends you, consider what inaction with approval has cost. In that moment, the Union chambers across every capital, every server, every sector froze. We are Deathworlders. We do not pretend to be gentle. But when we say never again, we mean it. A final image appeared. A line of human soldiers. Standing along a cliffside on Varellan, backs to the camera, watching the sun rise over a wounded world.
Ow.
Their weapons were slung, their helmets off. And beside them, children sat on the rocks, looking forward in silence. Then the screen went black, and in every language, across every planet, the same final sentence appeared. We heard the cry, and we answered. That was it. No threat. No demands. No declarations of war. Just a simple, unavoidable truth. Humanity had acted when others didn't. In the hours that followed, the Union Council called it an unauthorized broadcast. They blamed pirates. They opened investigations. But no one listened. The people had already made up their minds. Back on Varellan, Councillor Raish stood atop the central tower, watching the horizon. The village below had begun rebuilding. Human engineers worked beside Varellan farmers, laying new irrigation lines. Portable defense grids hummed quietly at the borders, gifts from Earth without signatures. The children who once ran from shadows now laughed freely. Sergeant Ruiz stepped up beside him, silent for a moment. Then she asked, "Do you think they understand?" Raish looked up at the sky where the Graveborn still floated like a silent shield. Not yet, but they will. In orbit, Captain Ward received a brief message from Earth Command. Just 6 words. Transmission approved. Prepare for fallout. Hold. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He simply whispered, acknowledged. Lieutenant Mira stepped beside him. They'll come harder now. Let them, Ward said. He turned to the comms officer. Begin. Scanning nearby systems. Any colony that's gone dark? I want to know. Any station ignored by Union patrols. Any world close to collapse. Understood, because Ward said. Eyes locked on the stars. This was never about one planet. This was about all of them. The Graveborn shifted position, engines humming low. Prow, turning toward deep space. Earth had sent its message. Not through diplomats, not through alliances, but through action. And now the galaxy knew, when Deathworlders hear a cry for help, they don't send negotiators. They send warships. And sometimes, that's exactly what's needed. The silence after Earth's broadcast was louder than any war cry. Across the galaxy, political halls that once echoed with the confident noise of bureaucracy now sat hushed. On core worlds like Varix and Juntel, high-ranking diplomats locked their doors. Union admirals suddenly canceled their public briefings. Tired news networks quietly adjusted their tone from ridicule to respect. And in hidden meeting rooms deep within the Galactic Union's highest spire, the real conversation began. 13 figures gathered in a secure chamber, far beneath the Union capital of Aranthus Prime. No names were spoken. These were not public servants. These were the architects of silence, the masters of influence, leaders of trade syndicates, defense contractors, political dynasties, and black budget war councils. They had shaped the galaxy for centuries from behind polished walls and untraceable channels, and now they were afraid. The humans have overstepped, one growled. A reptilian elder from the House of Vul. They threaten the balance we have maintained. They threaten exposure. Another snapped, her voice tight. That colony was not just a farming world. The slavers were ours. A third voice finished, cold and unapologetic. Their profit reached all of us. Their silence protected our systems, and Earth burned them in public. No one spoke for a moment. They released the camp footage. A younger strategist whispered. The camps we hid under trade routes. They showed it all. Not just slavers. Our symbols, our data trails. Another voice, slower and darker, murmured, and they didn't ask for anything in return. That's the problem, said the oldest among them. They don't want control. They want justice. And that makes them dangerous. In orbit above Virulon, the Graveborn continued its silent patrol, unaware of the plans forming against it, or perhaps not caring. Inside its war room, Captain Ward reviewed system maps, red-flagged communications, and leaked data trails. Another colony just requested Earth support, Mira reported quietly. Gareth's post, Fringe World. No major resources. No strategic value. Ward tapped the screen. That's the third this week. Why are they reaching out now? Because we answered. Mira paused. What if they're bait? Then we spring the trap, Ward said flatly, and make them regret setting it. On the Virulon surface, Councillor Raish walked the rebuilt edge of the capital, escorted by 2 Marines. He had begun receiving messages not from citizens, but from politicians. Some threatened him for aligning with Earth. Some begged for introductions to the Deathworlders. He ignored them all. Instead, he walked with the people, listened to the farmers, to the survivors, to the children playing beside newly installed water systems. And every time someone asked, "Will the humans stay?" he answered honestly, "I don't know. But even if they leave, we'll never be the same." Elsewhere in the galaxy, the Union's secret council prepared a countermeasure. Not a battle fleet, not a diplomatic storm, something worse. They authorized Project Phantom. It wasn't designed to win. It was designed to erase. A black ship, invisible to most sensors. A kill team trained to strike inside human vessels, to assassinate and vanish. No trace, no trial. A ghost in the dark. The message must be silenced, the leader said, before others follow it. The ship departed the shadows of Aranthis's prime and jumped straight toward Virulon. But humans didn't just build ships, they built traps. The Graveborn was already tracking the Phantom-class vessel before it reached their system. Its stealth drive was advanced, but human tech, born on a death world. It's designed to see predators hiding in darkness. Captain Ward watched the readout appear, cold in the void. "I thought they'd try something," Mira said, cracking her knuckles. "Bring us to Black Protocol," Ward ordered. "Silent ops. We don't warn them, and if they engage, we end it before they know it started." Moments later, deep in Virulon's outer orbit, the shadow ship passed through what it thought was an empty zone. Instead, it hit a human sensor net invisible to standard scans. The trap snapped shut. The crew inside never saw what destroyed. THEM, a pulse silent, clean, precise. A single torpedo built to rupture the core, not explode. Just erase. The Union's message was deleted in the dark. The next day, Earth's command received a report from the Graveborn. Attempt made, intercepted. Operation terminated. Message remains unchanged. And across the galaxy, new messages began to spread, not from governments, but from civilians, from colonies, from abandoned trade posts, from refugee worlds. "We saw what you did on Virulon. We believe." Not safe. Please come. Not Union. Please respond. Not help from the Council. Just one word. Earth. The secret council on Aranthis Prime watched the spread of these messages with rising dread, because they knew now that Earth didn't need fleets to change the galaxy. It only needed proof, and it had given the galaxy enough to start asking questions. The Union had no answers for, because the shadows were shifting, and humanity had just dragged the truth into the light. The stars above Virulon burned soft and golden as dawn broke across the horizon. For the first time in living memory, there were no fires on the surface, no ships overhead hunting the weak. No cries for help echoing across dead frequencies. What had once been a world under siege was now quiet, restored, rebuilt, and guarded. But above that peace hovered a new truth. A shadow darker than fear. Not because it threatened destruction, but because it had proven something far more dangerous. It could come and go as it pleased, in the command deck of the Graveborn. Captain Elias Ward stood alone, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed. On the endless dark, round him, monitors tracked growing unrest across multiple sectors' worlds, rising up, questioning the Union's silence, demanding Earth's intervention. New colonies were declaring independence from Union defense networks. Minor governments were forging side pacts with Earth's intelligence wing. Whispers had become shouts. Ward had done what no human before him had ever done. He had turned one war into a galactic reckoning. Lieutenant Mira entered quietly, holding a fresh data slate. 3 more colonies are requesting presence, she said. One's openly. Declared they want a human fleet parked in orbit. They're calling us Guardians. Ward didn't blink. We're not Guardians. No, Mira agreed. But they think we are. What do we tell them? Ward looked out at the stars, and his voice came out low like steel under ice. We don't tell them anything. Mira frowned. Sir, we show them. Below, on. Virulin's main plaza, Councillor Raish Lorvac, addressed a gathering of thousands Virulins, humans and refugees from other fringe systems who had arrived after the battle. Some stood with tears still on their faces. Others held weapons looted from fallen slavers, determined never to be powerless again. Behind Raish, the wreckage of a slaver gunship had been turned into a monument, its twisted HULL now engraved with the words, "Never again." Your children are alive, Resh spoke, voice clear across the open square. Not because of treaties, not because of promises, but because someone came. They didn't ask. They didn't wait. They answered. Turned to the side as sergeant. Ruiz stepped forward, armor gleaming under the twin suns. She carried no flag, no ceremony, just presence. They didn't ask for anything in return, Raish continued, but we will give something anyway. A truth to carry forward. A message for the stars. If you hurt the weak, if you silence cries for help, if you think no one will come. He nodded toward Ruiz. Just remember, Deathworlders don't ask twice. In orbit, Earth Command received the final status report. From the Graveborn, it was simple. Virulin stabilized. Hostile fleets neutralized. Union response unsuccessful. Deathworlder reputation confirmed. Requesting new directives. Back on the Union capital of Aranthus's prime, the inner council was crumbling. Protests had spread to the inner worlds. Governors were resigning. High-ranking officials were fleeing their posts. The black budget slaver programs were exposed, and citizens wanted heads. Most frightening of all, entire fleets had begun to stand down, not in loyalty to Earth, but because they no longer believed in the Union's strength. One admiral, when pressed on live broadcast, spoke plainly. We watched Earth act, and we watched the Union hesitate. I swore an oath to protect civilians. Earth kept that oath. We didn't. And just like that, 100 ships turned away from the Union's call. Captain Ward reviewed the footage later that evening. No emotion. Crossed his face. Instead, he turned to Mira and asked, "How long before the next message?" "Not long. Someone else will cry out, and when they do, we'll answer," she said. Ward nodded once. Then prep the ship. Virulin can hold its own now. You're sure? They've seen what it takes, Ward said. Won't forget. As the Graveborn rose from orbit, leaving Virulin's skies calm behind it, a single encrypted message was left behind on every public relay in every system that still listened. We are not conquerors. We are not saviors. We are the ones who come when no one else does. And if we come again, know this. We do not ask twice. From that day forward, no slaver ship entered fringe space again. No colony's distress call went unanswered, and no one, not even the Galactic Union, dared pretend that Earth's silence and weakness. Because now the stars had a memory, and that memory had a name. Humanity. The ones who came, the ones who acted, the ones who answered.